Hi, everybody. Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. If you're joining us now, please feel free to turn your videos on. We would love to see you so that we can have more of a conversation. So if you can, feel free to turn your video on. And thank you for joining us today on this career mentoring session on education. We have three fabulous panelists and a moderator to tell you a little bit about how they launched their careers in education and how they're making progress in that career. So moderating today will be Edson Carvajal, who is one of our alumni leaders. He's a member of our alumni council and has been helping us over the past 2 years really think about the best ways that we can engage alumni to give back to scholars. And this is one way that we're doing it. So thank you so much, Edson, for joining us today. You can introduce yourself a little later and tell scholars what you do, and Edson will introduce the rest of the panelists. I do want to give a shout out to my colleague, Melissa Barrera, who is helping put together this session that we're bringing to you today. Thank you, Melissa. And also from our team, you have our president, Candy Marshall, joining us. Say hello, Candy.
Hi, all.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to you, Edson, to introduce yourself and the panelists.
Hey, everyone. My name is Edson. I'm a UTRGV graduate, and I graduated with a degree in marketing, and I currently work as a licensed realtor here in South Texas. And I'm thankful for everybody that's here. Hopefully you guys can get a little bit more information and some guidance from the panelists. So I'll start with Maria. Just tell us name, major, and a little bit more about you and your career and how you got there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria, and I graduated from CSUSB in 2017 with a bachelor's in English literature. And after that, I applied to Teach for America, and I'm a 2018 core stationed in Las Vegas, where I live and work. I teach 8th grade ELA, and I will be staying in the classroom for an additional year. And I'm very happy to be here and give you more information about the career.
And if you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll go over them after we go through the other questions with the panelists. Gabriel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Gabriel Gamino. I am a Arizona State graduate, graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's in journalism and mass communication. In the spring, I graduated with my master's in communication, and I'm currently the parent community liaison for the Glendale Union High School District in Glendale, Arizona.
So Gabriel does not have a degree in education per se. He has a communication degree, so that's pretty interesting. Sometimes I feel that as even when I was in college, we thought that it's very linear, or you have to get a degree in a certain field to be in that field. And as you get older and explore career options, you'll see that it's very flexible and versatile, your degree. And your experience matters a lot too. So I don't know if Gabriel, you want to talk a little bit about that, how you ended up in education, and what you do in your particular position.
Yeah, for sure. So I started working in education in my undergrad as an AVID tutor. I don't know if any of you guys are aware of that program, AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. But so that's where I kind of got my niche. When I graduated, I didn't like any of the areas or stations that were offering me jobs in broadcast journalism. And so I started looking for opportunities with connections, and one of them was at the Glendale Union High School District. So I already kind of had a passion growing up, my parents telling me, school, that's how you're going to get ahead, and to be able to give back to my community per se. And this was how I got into it. And I've been fortunate enough that my degree and that I work in a department where my degree is valid and able to, where I learned skills to be able to implement to inform our community. So as parent community liaison, my job mainly is to be the bridge between our community and parents and our district office. And so through that, we release multimedia content on our website and social medias, important message through email and phone dialers, but also parent town halls where parents can express their concerns to the administration and to the district staff to make sure that we are able to provide them the best educational opportunity possible.
Okay, and Christina, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cristina Velázquez. I'm originally from Venezuela, and I grew up in Miami. I was part of the inaugural cohort of the TheDream.Us scholarship, the very first few who were fortunate to get the scholarship at Miami-Dade College in Miami, Florida. And then after I got my associates at Miami-Dade College, a community college, I transferred to Georgetown University in DC, and that's where I got my bachelor's in international politics. So similar to Gabriel, I ended up teaching or in education, but that wasn't necessarily my major. And then while I was in undergrad, I volunteered with an organization called Breakthrough, which I'm going to tell you more about later on. And that kind of led me on my path to education. And then I also applied to Teach for America. And now I am an 8th grade social studies teacher in Washington, D.C. And I teach history and Spanish, which is also pretty special.
Okay, Maria, what should scholars, juniors and seniors, especially during this year or next year, be doing to get ready for this profession in this industry?
Yeah, so even though I studied English and I'm now teaching English in middle school, I never had the intention to go into the career actually when I was an undergrad. And everything happened very quickly for me. So one of the things that I would tell juniors and seniors would be, if you're really interested in the career, look into the testing requirements that each state requires you to have to enter the profession. For example, in California, I know it's the CBEST and CSET. Here in Nevada, it's the Praxis and the Praxis Core. Because again, I didn't have the intention of going into the profession until I came across Teach for America, I only had one shot at the very end to pass it. So that was one of the biggest stressors. So definitely, if you're really interested, start studying or taking those tests.
Christina, do you have anything to add to that? Or Gabriel?
Yeah, so similarly, I was international relations while I was doing my associates in Miami, and the honors program I was in required that we do community service. And in the long list of like organizations, Breakthrough was at the top because of the B. And I reached out and I began volunteering and tutoring on the weekends with them and teaching these incredible young, high achieving, low income first gen students. And I fell in love with it. And then they have a summer fellowship. So I was volunteering while I was during the school year. And then I was told about their summer fellowship. And Breakthrough is a national organization that with the goal of closing the achievement gap, they help provide support and academic opportunities to high achieving low income students across the country. And like I said, I began volunteering with them in Miami and I applied to their summer fellowship. And they have it all across the country. And at the time, I couldn't study abroad. I didn't really have those opportunities to do all these other like really meaningful volunteer opportunities in other countries or elsewhere. So I was really excited when I realized I could go anywhere in the country and help kind of continue volunteering and doing something that was truly fulfilling. Because they paid for your housing, they gave you a stipend for the summer. I applied in San Francisco because I knew the city in terms of rent was really expensive. And since they were going to pay for it, I was like excited to go somewhere totally new. And I became a teaching fellow. And Breakthrough is particularly meaningful. And the reason I encourage a lot of people to apply or at least learn more about it is because up until this day, despite all the training Teach for America has given me and anything I've learned on my own, nothing prepared me for the classroom like Breakthrough did. They gave me a ton of responsibility even as an undergraduate. I was a freshman when I first went, and I went the following summer to San Francisco my sophomore year. And you're basically a full teacher. You're creating curriculum. You have a class of students. You're also building a school year into the summer. So there's like yearbook club, there's like parent night where parents, you come and learn to build relationships with parents. It's like a full school year condensed into a summer, and the people leading it are the teachers. So it's one of the most meaningful experiences I've had to prepare me for what I was later going to experience as a Teach for America Corps member. So Breakthrough kind of caught me by surprise. Although I started volunteering, I fell in love with it. And I'm happy to help anyone who would like to apply to Breakthrough. I believe their deadlines are in February. But if you're like excited to start doing something now, like I mentioned, they offer tutoring and other opportunities locally. If you have a Breakthrough site near you, you can begin your work soon.
That sounds like it. Like that'd be really helpful and beneficial to for the scholars, Breakthrough. How was the process to get into that internship? You know, just a little bit about were there any interviews, any obstacles that you faced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I applied, when I first did like volunteering as a school year tutor, they just wanted to make sure that I was, I guess, qualified. So I was a college student. I don't remember them really asking too many questions to help. They just really needed the help. To help with the kids and just tutoring them with their homework. But for the summer fellowship, that is definitely more rigorous, and it was very long, which also prepared me for the Teach for America application, which was also pretty long and extensive. I believe I had to do 2 or 3 essays, kind of telling them about myself, then why Breakthrough, and I think it was like a situational, like what would I do if these certain scenarios appeared up in my classroom. And then there were 2 interviews, and I was accepted, but then when they realized I was a community college student, they almost rescinded the offer because they believed their goal is to get these students to 4-year universities. But then I like advocated for myself and explained obviously my situation and my limited opportunities. And after that, they changed it. And this was particular to the San Francisco site, but they realized that they needed to be more inclusive. But yeah, the application was pretty extensive and I did have to prepare. And I'm happy to help anyone prepare for that if they're interested in applying.
Okay. So Gabriel, what was the process in getting your position, and is there any tips you have for people that are going to be applying for similar positions or positions in the education field?
So for me, obviously, it was a little different. I didn't have to go through any testing or anything to be in the classroom or any special certifications per se. Essentially, it was kind of like applying to a regular job, except that you do have to make sure that you are flexible enough to work and deal with the challenges that come with education, which are pretty unique sometimes. But one of the things that I can say that is important if you are interested is to make sure that you start looking for internships in college in whatever department you're interested in. So I know at our district, we have a lot of interns in our finance department. So budgeting and, determining the spending, if we're gonna go for bonds or not. In our special education department, working with students who require a little bit more assistance. So definitely one of those things is trying it and then going from there.
Okay. So obviously, you guys have a lot of options when it comes to working in education, from working with school district to charter schools, which have been growing, and or private schools. Are any of the panelists, have you guys had any experience with charter or private schools? I know you guys don't work there, but did you guys consider that or had any interviews for any of those type of positions? Maria, Did you consider a charter school or a private school when you were looking for a?
No, so TFA works a little bit differently. Essentially, TFA endorses you and they place you in a classroom. So here, at least in Las Vegas, you are either placed in CCSD, which is the school district, or some core members are placed in charter schools. So it just really depends where you're placed. I was placed in a public school, so I really don't have any experience with charter or private schools.
What are the pros and cons of your profession? Is there anything that you didn't expect when you were before you started?
I think anyone in education could tell you that it can be very overwhelming. It doesn't just require you to be there physically present every single day, but mentally and emotionally, and to be able to balance all those things while at the same time, leading a personal life with professional life. And in the case of core members, a lot of us are also enrolled in a licensing program or a master's program. So there's a lot of things that you have to balance. So that's definitely one of the first things that I struggled with my first year of teaching. But I think the connections and the relationships that I was able to build with my students, their families, and just the communities really made it all worth it. So that's why I'm staying in the classroom one more year.
And Christina, what about you? Any pros and cons? Anything you didn't expect when you first joined?
So I kind of touched on this earlier. Breakthrough was such an incredible introduction and holistic in every way. And I think I obviously did encounter every situation, but I understood how challenging and demanding teaching is, especially in your first years as you're getting a grip on things. And I knew it was going to be really, really hard work. And the reason Teach for America places us in certain schools is because oftentimes they're the neediest schools. And I understood that very well. And it definitely was not easy, but nothing really caught me off surprise. And I say that because I often get asked, would you recommend Teach for America to a friend or a family member? And I can't ever answer that unless I know how passionate the person is. So Teach for America is like a pathway, and they provide some supports, but nothing can ever prepare you for what it's like. And at the end of the day, your passion and your love and care for the students and the community you teach in is what's going to drive you. And if you don't have that, then I'm not going to recommend it, because it's going to be really, really hard. And it's one of those jobs that if you don't find like greater meaning in it, then it's going to be very easy to quit, because there's nothing that's supporting you. So Teach for America, and along with Breakthrough, we had like career workshops and learned about all the different ways. So Teach for America is one way, but there are residency programs where you're a student teacher for almost 3 years before you even have a full classroom. There are so many options like urban teachers. I have a lot of friends who did that. So there are a lot of residency programs, the Boston residency program as well. So there are a lot of different ways to enter the classroom, and you're going to enter the classroom at different levels of preparedness. Teach for America, you graduate and you join, and you're kind of in the classroom and you have to kind of fend for yourself. And then there are other pathways that really prepare you, and there's a gradual release of responsibility, and I think you enter the classroom feeling more prepared. One of the reasons why I decided Teach for America as opposed to all those other pathways was because of how vocal they were in support of Dreamers and of DACA recipients. And I understood that as a national organization, TFA had the resources to really support me with whatever was going to happen. So I joined Teach for America in 2018, just like Maria, and that was after DACA had been rescinded, and so many crazy things were happening as I was graduating and like deciding what was going to become of my life. And Teach for America was there for every step of the way, and they pay for my DACA renewal. There are lawyers that can advise me. So I just understood that they had the resources to not just be my employer, but to support me in every way. And that's one of the main reasons I decided to go with Teach for America and not go and just apply to a charter school where I could have gotten hired, or to a private school, because I needed to know my employer was going to have my back, you know, if things went south.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like Teach for America does provide a lot of resources and support for teachers, and especially new teachers, having friends and family working in the education field. Sometimes they'll tell me about the struggles that they go through figuring everything out, and having to start from scratch, right? All the lesson plans and everything. So that thank you for sharing. That's awesome. So Maria, this last semester, pretty much almost all teachers went virtual and had to do online classes. And Candy brought it up, and it's a good question. What were some of the challenges, opportunities presented this last term, and how was it shifting from being an in-person teacher to an online teacher, especially how you talked about having that emotional connection with students and trying to be there for them, right?
Yeah, it's definitely very, very difficult, and it does highlight that inequity. So CCSD serves a large percentage of Latinx and Black students and families, and for us at my school, it was from one Friday, and that Monday was just completely online. And the inequity being that 80%, 90% of students don't have a device at home to do online learning, and close to 97%, I think, lacked adequate Wi-Fi or internet connections. In my experience, from the 90 students on my roster, I probably had 30 to 40% of them show up for Google Hangouts and actually be active online. That is something that I am really trying to think about how I'm going to tackle that, given that CCSD will start distance education next month. So definitely something that's very, very difficult. I don't know how really to present a challenge to those inequities, like lack of devices or internet connections, but more than anything is just really reaching out to the kids every single day. But it's definitely nowhere near as effective as in-person teaching.
Okay, is there anything you want to add to that, Gabriel? How's it been shifting from being in the community and being there more in contact with everyone, the community, parents, now to doing that virtually, and how did that affect you?
Well, definitely a little bit very interesting for us. Luckily for our district, we were on spring break when the governor ordered that we switched to online instruction, and so we had a little bit of time to prepare. But from being outside of the classroom, it was definitely overwhelming for a lot of our teachers, and for us at the district, because we were essentially building as we went. And so we had to check all of our resources, make sure we had a lot of our Chromebooks, check out procedures, get together with internet service providers in the area to make sure that we could offer a reduced cost or some type of partnership to these students, or hotspots to make sure that they were able to get on. So credit through this whole pandemic goes to teachers, because they have gotten the work done. But it's definitely been interesting being on the flip side and helping facilitate it, because parents are concerned for their health, for their students' well-being, and a lot of our teachers who are older are concerned. So definitely an interesting situation that is evolving and ever changing, but thankfully we've been able to manage for now with what we've got, and we're now better prepared for the fall.
I would like to add also that a lot of the parents in our communities are the essential workers. So a lot of them had to keep going to work while their kids stayed at home. So childcare was also one of those challenges. So a lot of the time my students were in 8th grade, they couldn't really log on and be active with their work because they were babysitting and running the household while their parents were essential workers in their communities. So that's another really difficult thing to work with.
Thank you for sharing. So Christina, I know that you're applying to law school. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What your what your next step is, or what you looking into doing after getting into law school or graduating from law school?
Yeah, so as a teacher to eighth graders, and I teach in immigrant community in Washington, D.C. As I mentioned, I teach at a bilingual school. So 50% of our students are immigrants and the other 50% are Black. And that comes with a lot of challenges, there's a lot of gang violence in the area, a lot of like recruitment. A lot of our students are already have entered the criminal justice system, and if it's not because of that, then it's because of immigration. And there's just like a lot of intersections with the law, and I've seen how it impacts my students. From my personal experience, I know how the immigration system has impacted me, but seeing that it's obviously how it impacts youth and it impacts youth in my community is kind of what propelled me to kind of decide to go to law school. I think there are ways that to support them when my students would come and had ankle monitors on because they violated their probation, and conversations about them, how their lawyers and their defense attorneys were the people that advocated for them. It just made me realize that if a cop were to arrest one of my students or interact with them, they would see kind of this stereotype. And I see these students as like the people that I love and that I spent most time with. And I think there needs to be more people advocating for youth, especially immigrant and youth of color, especially when it comes to the racial violence that we see in this country today. So I am applying to law school, and for law school, traditionally you had to apply using the LSAT, but now they're accepting the GRE. A lot of universities are accepting the GRE, so I am currently studying to take the GRE to apply to law school, and I share that because a GRE is definitely more versatile. So if any of you want to go to grad school but are also contemplating law school, you can just study for one test and then send that to whatever schools you want. I also believe it's a more accessible test. You don't have to pay for a very expensive prep course. I'm studying on my own. I check out the books from the library. People have GRE books to just give away. So it's definitely more accessible, and I'm really happy law schools have kind of caught on that this is going to make for a better environment at the law school level. So yeah, that's my plan for next year. But with the protests and everything going on, I'm very happy to be staying in the classroom and to be teaching history because this is a very important time.
Thank you for that insight. Yeah. And what about you, Gabriel? What do you plan on doing in the near future, going from there where you're at right now? I do see you already have your master's in communication. Do you also continue? Are you also pursuing more education or higher education as well?
Yeah, so at some point, I am considering law school in the future. My significant other is at the University of Law, the Denver University, studying law. She's L1, and so she's kind of inspired me to go on and try that myself. But for now, I finished my master's, and I want to be able to implement it, maybe go into the nonprofit sector, and use my talents there a little bit more.
Awesome. Nonprofit, can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, so specifically, I'm really interested. I'm in the process of working with the Phoenix Children's Hospital Foundation, and through them being able to tell the stories of low-income children who need the financial help to, pay their hospital bills and things like that. So really what I'm interested in working at right now.
Awesome. And Matthew Conway shared with us at Kaplan has partnered up with TheDream.Us to provide us with GRE study resources. So that's something to consider. What about you, Maria? What does the future hold for you? What are your plans?
So for me, I'm staying in the classroom next year, and I'll be finishing my master's in education, curriculum and instruction in December. So I'm looking forward to that. My initial goal was to stay in the classroom for 5 years, just because I really wanted to make sure that I did something, really got to know and understand my community. And that's something that I'm still in the process of doing. So after that, I think I am also interested in policy and advocacy and community outreach. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. Gabriel, what has been the biggest support to get to where you're at right now? What has been the biggest thing that has helped you, or the person that supported you the most, or could you give us a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think my biggest support system for me has been my parents. Remembering the sacrifice that they made coming to this country and bringing me to have a better life than the one they had, and definitely, you know, them being there during those long nights during my undergrad and graduate school, but also one of the biggest supporters I think has been the parents that I've met and whose lives I've been able to help change through their students, and providing them the resources that they need, and just makes me want to keep going.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think we can all relate to that a little bit. I know that my parents have also been one of the biggest supporters of mine, even though sometimes it's you don't get too much guidance, but you just get that support of continue going forward and going to school and trying to find what's right for you, right? What about you, Christina? What has been the biggest support you've had to get you where you're at?
I think community at Georgetown. One of the reasons I selected Georgetown was because I knew that they were really welcoming of undocumented students. And I think that's been really important for me, that in whatever direction I go, even now that I'm looking at law school, I recognize that I'm entering a community that's gonna protect me and support me. And as I mentioned earlier, that's why I decided to choose TFA. And that's why I decided to stay in DC, because I had a community here. And my family, my mom is my family, and she's in Miami, and she's always with me wherever I go. But I think being really intentional about like the professional communities that I pick, because we do have a lot of challenges, and there are a lot of things, like I mentioned earlier, you have to kind of advocate for yourself in a lot of spaces, because there is not always a path cut out for us. But if I can make that a little bit easier for myself by having the support of the community around me and knowing that I'm valued and cared for, it's like having that community makes it all a little bit easier. So I had that at Georgetown, and I have that now through Teach for America.
Great. Yeah, I feel like that being under DACA can, especially when applying to jobs and looking for the right place to work, it can it's a reminder, and it's there, and it can be a difficult conversation sometimes to have with people. What about you, Maria? What has been the biggest support for you?
Yeah, well, I think all of our parents are the original dreamers, right? But I think for me has been the organizations. So the TheDream.Us provided me with the access of getting higher education, and that higher education gave me the access of applying to Teach for America, and Teach for America has given me that access to be in the classroom and now to be in a leadership position to provide resource for my students and their families, who a lot of them share a similar story with me. And it's all about providing that access for me. That's been the biggest support and influence, really.
Thank you. Tanya, I don't know if you wanted to go over the TFA and the breakthrough internship. I know you wanted to touch base on that towards the end.
Sure, thank you, everyone. You've heard a lot about Breakthrough already, so I won't go as much into that. Just know that we have a partnership with them. We also do have a partnership with Teach for America. So in the fall, you will be getting some communications from us about applying either through the Breakthrough Summer Internship or through TFA. So be on the lookout for those emails that we will start sending in around September, October, November, if you want to go that route. But there are other ways also to get involved in education beyond being a teacher or working with public schools. So I just want to bring up three other possible ways for you to do it. You've heard a little bit about charter schools. So there are charter school organizations that are either very local to where you live or sometimes national. So organizations like Teach for America or Uncommon Schools or Achieve achievement first. There are many of them. So I really encourage you to check out charter schools. There are obviously pros and cons also about working in charter schools, but one of the pros is that they tend to give you a lot more flexibility. Because they don't have to necessarily follow all the regulations. They can be more nimble and can sometimes more quickly adapt to the needs of their students. And charter schools also can have residency programs. So you can start as a resident and work it like that for a year and then move on to a full-time position. The other thing that I would encourage you to check out is the private schools, either parochial Catholic schools or independent schools. My colleague Melissa is going to share the link to NAIS, which is the National Association of Independent Schools. Now, you might think yourself that you might not be interested in teaching in a private school because it doesn't necessarily serve everybody and the entire public, which is definitely something to consider. But the other thing to consider is that private schools have a lot of resources. And if you really want to become a good teacher and really learn how to teach, the craft of teaching, private schools is a good place to learn to do that. And if you teach there for a year or two, then you can bring those techniques on how to teach into the public sector and to a charter school sector. So then you come to those communities as an experienced teacher, having learned some of that craft. So I suggest that you also think about private schools as an entryway. And a lot of times private schools do not require teaching credentials. And a lot of them also have residency programs where you can teach for a year or so as a resident and move on. The other way to enter education is through working with nonprofits that are working in the education sector. For example, you can work for a think tank or a research organization like Education Trust, where you can have a job as a researcher and develop policies and papers that move the education field forward. Or you can work as an evaluator also in one of those organizations, or you can work in college access organizations like TheDream.Us or like Breakthrough or Summer Search or QuestBridge. There are hundreds of those kinds of college access organizations that focus on helping low-income students get ready for college. And you can work as a program director, as a teacher, as an administrator, as all kinds of different ways to work in college access organization. And there's another organization, the National Association of National College Access Network, which is NCAN, that I suggest you also get familiar, because in NCAN you can see sometimes job posts, and also a lot of these college access nonprofits are members of that organization, and you can become familiar with what's out there. So you could become an educator, not just as a teacher, but you could become like Gabriela, like as a parent liaison, or become involved in policy or program development or program evaluations. Lots of different ways to become a teacher. So we're putting in the chat box a lot of these resources for you, a lot of links for you. Grab those links and start researching these organizations. And that's it, Edson. I don't know if you want to move now to the Q&A piece.
Yeah, of course. If you guys have any questions, feel free to, anything I might have missed, anything you want to know in particular or ask anyone in particular, feel free to put them right now in the chat so we can go over them. From what you're telling us, Tanya, it sounds like there's a lot of options for students to get started and explore. I know that where I'm from in Texas, IDEA schools are pretty big, and they're growing as well. And those are a good option. Those are charter schools, I believe.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's any of the panelists, if you guys have anything else you want to add, or any more information that you want to share that you think is important, or you want the scholars to know that could be beneficial for them.
So I see questions are starting to come up in the chat box, Edson.
So Selena asks, so I plan on being an elementary principal. Do you have any advice for getting to that path? I don't know if anyone wants to answer that. Christina, Maria, Gabriel.
I don't necessarily know how qualified I am to talk about the pathway to becoming a principal. As a teacher, I can say that it's really meaningful when administrators, principals, assistant principals have teaching experience. So I would say a good place to start is to start in the classroom. And then I know a lot of schools, or in order to move up, depending on the district, depending on the city, you need either master's in educational leadership or just some sort of higher education. So know that at some point in your path, you're going to have to pursue another degree or maybe even a doctorate. And I think there are many ways for you to get started in the classroom or with any organizations. There's like early childhood, different things that you can do. But I would say like spending some time to truly understand the community that you're in and that you'd like to be a principal in. I think that's something that doesn't really get talked about, and that also goes with the advice to new teachers is really learning about the history of the community that you're going to be teaching in, and then also learning about how to manage people. I think being a principal, you have to wear a lot of different hats that go with managing. So maybe you could take a management course on the side or things like that to prepare you for all the things that a principal needs to handle.
So Mitzi Salinas asked, what advice can you give to new teachers? I don't know if Maria, you'd like to answer that or give a little bit more advice.
Yeah, well, like I was saying at the beginning, it's all about balance, really. And my experience has been very different than the traditional route into education or teaching because of Teach for America. I do want to clarify that Teach for America is not your employer, so they simply endorse you for the school district in whatever region or area you are sent to. So for me, the first year was the balance between my personal life and in grad school while I was getting my master's and my license through the ARL program, and my partnership with Teach for America and my work in the classroom with the school district. So it can be overwhelming, but I think Christina mentioned this. It's really, if you have a passion for the field, it is totally worth it. But just be very aware of that balance, and it's very easy to fall off. So
how did you find that work-life balance? What helped you?
So for me, it was making those connections with some of the people that I met through Teach for America, because we were all starting new, right? We were first year teachers. So I formed very close relationships with them, and some of them are also documented and some of them are not. So it's all about that balance, and point of it's venting out, but also trying to find validity in the way that you are feeling and the stressors that you are going through. So definitely communication and finding those relationships with people who are in the same position as you are.
Okay,
I'll quickly add for the new teachers, and similar to what Maria and I went through similar experiences in DC. We had to do our licensing program through Johns Hopkins, and it was very intensive because I was doing schoolwork that often felt like busy work, and at the end of the day, my real priority were the students that I was going to teach the next day. So I was like writing essays about like brain development, and I'm like, great, this is awesome, but like I want to go over my lessons for tomorrow. So it was like definitely felt like I was being pulled in different directions, and I feel like that may be unique to Teach for America, but depending on where you're teaching, you may be also getting licensed at the same time, even if you're not doing Teach for America. And to that point, I think as teachers, we're figuring everything out, and you learn, it's a craft, and you are always like learning something new, but to remember like what your focus is, and my focus is doing best by my students every single time. So that was my priority, and that's how I found balance, that if I was going to let some things go, I would let them go, but as long as I was doing my best to serve my students. And if other things, like if my principal was asking me for something, I was like, that's important, but so are my students, and those are my priority right now. So might be late to that meeting, or certain things had to give. And as long as like I always had my students to ground me, that made it feel like, okay, maybe I'm not the best at X, but I am doing my best as a teacher. So that really was helpful for me.
There's a question here there's a question here from a student asking about teaching while you're in college. I think he's talking about being a TA. I don't know if any of you were a TA at any point while you were in college that you can speak to that, or how that might have helped you in launching an education career. No?
I briefly worked, because I went to CSUSB, but I went to the Extension campus in Palm Desert, so it was really, really small. And I wasn't necessarily a TA, but I was the instructional student assistant in the writing lab. So I was a writing tutor and working with, college students one-on-one. It's totally different than teaching in a middle school or public school, but definitely you have to find different ways to teach one thing to different students. So that's definitely something that may have helped me a little bit, finding different methods to teach the same thing.
Okay, so Fernanda Garcia asks, how did you find the funding to continue your education after an undergraduate degree? Gabriel, do you want to answer that? I know you have your master's already.
Yeah, so for me in Arizona, there's this thing called Prop 300, which bars non-citizens or permanent residents from getting public funding. And so I had to do scholarships, private scholarships, similar to TheDream.Us. Thankfully, the Arizona State has a foundation through which I was able to receive scholarship for part of it. And then the other one was a private loan, unfortunately, which I had to take out to continue funding for that. But definitely there is a lot of scholarships out there for depending what you want to study after your undergrad from organizations that are more than willing to help fund that.
Okay, so Matthew asks, says, my name is Genesis. I want to teach middle school math. Do you have any advice for putting together grant proposals for the classroom? I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with grant proposals.
I'm not familiar with grant proposals. I think maybe it's relating to like funding for the classroom. Correct me if I'm wrong, but every summer I've fundraised over $1,000 for my classroom through Pledge Sense, which Teach for America sets up for you, which is like a page, like a fundraising page. And that was just like asking people to share and just like private donors donating. In DC, you just basically get a room with desks and nothing else. Like I think I got a stapler and a board, not even markers, just like board eraser. So I really had to do a lot or fundraise to get pencils, paper, everything. And then if I wanted to go above and beyond to have like a rug or like pillows for kids to have like a reflection space, like that all had to come from private donors. I will also say because unfortunately, this is the reality for many teachers. There are a lot of fundraising, like Donors Choose, I think is a really popular one, which is amazing. It's a website where you kind of upload whatever project or whatever thing you want to fundraise, and then instead of them giving you money, they give you the actual material. So let's say I want students to read Esperanza Rising, and my school doesn't have the books. I can like upload the information for my project, and Donors Choose will people will donate to my project and then they'll send me the books. So it's a way for people to know like directly where their money's going and to know that it's going to help students in your classroom, and you can create a profile and things like that. So Donors Choose, Pledge Sense, and then good old GoFundMe. I feel like people, especially now, know that teachers are really important. So those are several ways. And then with the graduate school, there's also the scholarship, the Paul and Daisy Soros scholarship. They fund up to $90,000 for graduate degrees.
Yeah, I know that the Dream.Us is offering some, on some partner schools are offering money for grad school, right? Depending on the major and college. Candy says the newest regions here for IDEA, the newest regions, Houston, Permian Basin, Tampa Bay, are seeking employees to build IDEA's foundation of success for their local communities as well. Yeah, I've seen IDEA grow quite a bit in the past few years, where in the area where I live, there's been quite a few popping up, and IDEA is a good way to get into education, right? I know that they're very rigorous and like in what they require for teachers and then all the metrics that they have to meet as well. What I can add, a little bit I can add is I would also reach out to people that are local teachers in your community that you're familiar with. Ask to buy them a coffee and shadow them and just interview them, ask them questions. I'd recommend that for any undergraduate looking to get into any field. The best way to get into that is asking people who are already experienced as well and live in the area that so they can give you a better idea. I don't know if there's any other questions or if I missed anything here in the chat.
I also want to add, similar to that, you all are in college, and although you may not think if you're a freshman or just a sophomore, like you have a lot of experience, and there's a lot that you know that you probably didn't know when you were a sophomore or when you were a freshman. And when I was a senior in college, my counselor told me I couldn't go to college, that wasn't in the cards for me. And I didn't believe her, but momentarily that was true. And then when I got to Georgetown, I realized there was like a huge immigrant community in like the DC area, and I decided to create like a tutoring program, not even tutoring, just like mentorship program for me to just be the person to tell local undocumented students that they could go to college and that it was possible. It's not like I had a ton of expertise. I just wanted them to know that it was possible, and if I was the only person telling them it was possible in their lives, then like that was good enough for me. So like if you're in college and you feel like maybe there's not enough opportunities at your school, there's not like a tutoring program in place, like maybe you can set that up. And I took public transit like an hour each way, and I met with the students, and then I found friends and younger students who were like, oh, I like that you're doing that, can I go and like help? And then we just went and like read their essays and like things that like didn't require too much, but I had already been through it, and it helped a lot of local students. It ended up growing to like 25 mentees, and I had like 10 mentors that came with me. And it kind of just happened because I was like, I feel like there's more that I could be doing. So if there's nothing in place that like really fits, you could kind of build it yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are, first generation college students, so it's a lot about figuring it out, and it can feel overwhelming at times. But reaching out to the resources in your college and to alumni, I mean, those are great ways to start and get a little bit more information, right? Daniela asked, I've always been interested in teaching, but several of my past teachers have advised me not to go into teaching. Currently, I'm majoring in finance, so I'm wondering if it's possible to work in education with the field and with a finance degree, even if it's not in teaching. And I think we went over that a little bit, especially with Tanya, going over how you can work with different organizations that aren't necessarily teachers, but that work within the teaching field. I know that finance, accounting, and all those business fields are very big in the with the schools. I know that some of my school districts, some of my clients, they're accountants and they do some of that. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
You could still definitely teach, even if you don't have an education degree. You can go the charter school route, you can go Teach for America, you can go with private schools. And a lot of times when you go through programs like that, you can take sometimes night classes and get your credential that way. So you don't have to have an education degree to become a teacher. It does get to be a little tougher, but it's possible to do it. And as Edson was saying, finance skills are very, very much needed at schools, no matter what type of school, and also with nonprofits and organizations. So you have great skills to go into education.
And also,
yeah, and there's always electives that you could, there's a lot of electives that teachers can teach, especially when it comes to business and IT and everything else that's similar to that. And as being discouraged, why? I think, in my opinion, being discouraged is just sometimes people say that teachers are underpaid and overworked and stuff like that. So that's why they discourage students. Maria, why would you say that, that someone would discourage someone from going into teaching?
Yeah, it's definitely, those two things definitely sometimes you feel underappreciated, and financially is not the best career. But those people who are discouraging you basically field is not for them, right? It's maybe they're just projecting. But if you are really interested in it, I would say go for it. For me, it was totally worth it, even though I never had the intention of going to teaching, like I said. But it has been very, very fulfilling. And yeah, I mean, definitely it's not for everyone. And I work with a lot of teachers who shouldn't be in the classroom. Some of them with twice, 3 times, 4 times more experience than I have. And it's very clear which one of us shouldn't be in the profession. So if you're interested, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like we've all had one teacher that's made a great impact in our life, and then one teacher that's kind of not done the opposite, right? That we've said, hey, how are you a teacher, right? But
burnout is very real, right? So a lot of these teachers are completely burnt out and they want to discourage other people from going through that feeling. So yeah.
And someone asked, what resources, are any resources you might, right now that you might have for studying for these content specialty tests? Are there any resources that you might know of for studying the content specialty tests?
Well, it depends on the state where you are. So California, like I said, is the CBEST and the CSET, and in Nevada and in other states is the Praxis. And I think you can just Google that and you get free resources. Or if anything, you can go to Barnes & Noble and you get study books. So to be completely honest with you, I did not study for the CBEST, but it's basic education material. So I didn't think it was that difficult. As for the Praxis, that gets a little bit more intensive, and I just studied online, really.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, it varies from state to state, and professional license also varies state to state. And degrees like whether it's business, technology, or anything else, they're very flexible. So you can actually teach that, or you can, if you feel that teaching is not for you, you can go into another career path because you have that flexibility.
I was going to say that for the person who asked the finance question, like we said, like teaching, your heart really has to be in it. And if you discover that it's not, there are other ways that you could give back to your community. I always, after graduating, I'm sure you felt this way, like there are certain things you wish you would have learned in high school. And public schools and many schools are always willing to accept volunteers for after school programming. You can create kind of an after school club to teach kids how to kind of create their own balance sheet and create a budget. Those things, like I know my school, we have community partners that come and teach cooking classes, that teach how to sew, that teach cosmetology, and teach financial literacy. So like that could be you if like teaching isn't necessarily it, but like you have a passion for helping, that could be it. And then for the tests, like Maria already said this, it depends by state, but you should check in DC, the Praxis, we take the Praxis, but my SAT score was not stellar, but it qualified to not take the general practice test. So I really only had to take the one for my content, and my content is in Spanish, and it was like pretty basic. So it like really depends on the test and where you're located.
Awesome. Well, I think we're about to hit the 7:30 mark. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add or any other questions, final questions that you might have.
One last piece of advice, maybe we can go down the line to close it up.
Yeah, so let's start with Gabriel. What's your last piece of advice?
So my advice for anybody who is not studying education but wants to get into the field is definitely start getting involved. Like Cristina said, there's a lot of opportunities after school, during school at the district office, whether it be in their finance department or anything like that. But just start getting immersed in it. That way you can find that next step forward.
Okay. Maria, last piece of advice.
Don't limit yourself, really. A lot of you are asking, like, what if I'm majoring in this? Can I go into that? Yes, you definitely can. There's always resources as to like funding for graduate school. TFA, in my case, has helped me with that. So don't limit yourself, really. If you really want to do something, you definitely can.
And Cristina, last piece of advice for everybody.
Yeah, Maria kind of took it. Just that if there's really want to do, there's probably a way to get it done. Like the amount of times I've been told no in my life is just like, it's like funny at this point because it's like, joke's on you. But really, if you're passionate about something and you feel like that's where like you belong, if your teachers, even if people you trust, like tell you like counter advice, but it's like you're the one that's going to be living that life. Like you're the one that's going to be in the classroom, and if you're passionate for it, those teachers that are like burnt out or like over it, like it's your life. So if there's something that you really want to do, reach out to people. And I'm going to put my email in the chat box for anyone that's like applying to Breakthrough, Teach for America, or the GRE. Like I'm really happy to help and be a resource.
Yeah, and Daniela says if you guys can drop your contact info for any future questions. So if you guys want to share your email on there, that'd be great. So yeah, thank you guys so much to the scholars for coming to this event. I hope we've been able to answer some of your questions and this has been helpful. Thank you to the panelists for taking their time to answer these questions and give us some insight, some advice on what it's like to work in the education field. And thank you to the TheDream.Us for hosting it and for the opportunity to go to school as well, right? For everything that you guys do.
Thank you to you, Edson, for moderating this panel. And obviously, Cristina, Gabriel, Maria, wonderful to hear about your stories, how you're advancing in your careers, and how you're giving back to the community through education. Scholars, I'm really excited that you're going into this field. I've been in education my whole life since I was a college student. I would not change my career for anything in the world. I love it. And even though it is hard, you will be immensely inspired through your professional career because of education. And with that, I will say goodbye. Melissa, Candy, would you like to say any final word?
I want to add one thought that our colleague Gabby Pacheco would have shared with you if you, Christina, it picks up on what you said. When Gabby says when she hears no.
No, Candy, you're losing you.
Yeah, the audio is a little.
Yeah.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Gabby says when she hears no, she hears 1,000 yeses.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So goodbye, scholars. Have a great rest of the day. Keep in touch with us. We're sending a lot of opportunities your way. Read our emails, read our texts, and we will be in touch with you in a little while with more information. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Cristina, Maria, Edson, Gabriel, thank you so much.
We'll be reaching out to you again later on when we're ready to promote TFA or Breakthrough, so you guys can help us promote because you have a wonderful experience with both organizations. And definitely for you, Gabriel, I love your story of how you went from journalism into education. That's
yes.
a great thing to share. And actually, in a little, Melissa, I think Melissa or Sadana, no, my team member Sadana will probably be sending you an email in the next week, 2 weeks, because she's on vacation. So in a few weeks about hopefully sharing your story with us, either in a snapshot or in a little video. We're doing this grad campaign of stories to share with the world about how amazing our dreamers are and how they're contributing to this country. So you'll get an email about that. So thank you for being involved. Thank you for giving back. So have a good night. And I think, bye-bye.
That's it. Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye. And was there, let's see, who was it? Cristina Velasquez, are you still there?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's Cristina Velasquez. I was thinking, yes, you had a question, Cristina.
Yes, I had a question. I had sent you an email about the GRE fee reduction program. I couldn't find any information about it. And then
Yes. Right, the way that it works is that we actually have to give you a code and you enter that code to get the discount.
Okay.
For that. So I have to find, so Donna has her codes and she just went on vacation. So I just have to go and find those codes so that I can give you one.
Okay.
So actually, if you want to just hang on, let me see if I can. Let's see. Give me a second here. Where would those be? Let's see.
Ladies, I'm gonna log out to have some
Go
dinner.
ahead, Melissa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye, Cristina. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Laura and Ariel, you can hang on with us or you can leave. It's fine. It's fine. But let's see. Okay, I'm looking for your code, Christina. Let's see. It would be graduate school support. I don't know why they're not here. Okay, let me see. Yeah. Yeah, the GREs were given to Sadana and she's gone. When are you planning to take the test?
Within the next month.
Hmm. Um,
Because I sent an email to her and then she gave me your contact, so I had emailed you.
yeah, it's usually because I manage that, but the codes were sent to her. And then I have no idea where she's put them. They should be here. But GRE discounts. Right. Let me see if I can find you one. I don't know if Sadana will. I'll try to text her while she's on vacation.
You can email me or.
Yeah, I would email you
Okay.
if I could find one. I thought I would be able to find one right away, but I will see what I can do.
Okay, I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Christina.
No problem. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.